Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Now, the big question to me is that about 2 weeks ago, the courts in South Africa, in Pretoria, determined that some of these restrictions brought out by the ANC in a circle called the NCC were illegal and irrational. Well, that's not surprising. But what is surprising is we've heard nothing more about this. Now, 2 weeks ago was about the 2nd of June, and it said on the 16th of June they needed to sort out their restrictions so that it actually met the Bill of Rights. I haven't heard diddly squat about that, have you? Now, the 16th is tomorrow. So that's the last day they've got to sort out all these restrictions that they've brought in under the various stages, and specifically stages 3 and stages 4. And it gets even more confusing, and the water is even more muddied when you consider what's going to be happening in the courts in the next few weeks. Well, let me tell you. The Freedom Front Plus intends to take an urgent application to the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria to challenge the validity of the National Disaster Management Act and to request a finding that the government is abusing the Act, which will mean that the announced state of disaster and the associated regulations are unconstitutional. Well, as I said, the courts already found that under stage 3 and stage 4, things like smoking legally is illegal, are unconstitutional and cannot be enforced, and they've got to rewrite those regulations. But as far as I know, they haven't, which means that after tomorrow, they don't apply, according to the High Court in Pretoria. Anyway, let's get back to what the Freedom Front Plus is saying. According to party leader Pieter Groenewald, the balance of public interest between curbing the spread of the virus and unlocking the economy to prevent the loss of livelihoods and subsequently lives should come into play. Groenewald said on Thursday, at present, it is not taken into account with the draconian regulations imposed on the country. He said the lockdown and the associated regulations have already served their purpose to flatten the curve of the infection rate to allow healthcare services enough time to prepare for a possible large outbreak of COVID-19. Well, we know that's never happened, don't we? I mean, the flattened curve is like that. It's going straight towards the sky. Well, that's not surprising when you consider there's no social distancing in the townships, etc. Anyway, Groenewald went on to say, President Cyril Ramaphosa, the government's own head healthcare advisor, Professor Salim Abdul Karim, and the Minister of Health, Zweli Mkhize, have all repeatedly stated that we have already reaped the benefits of the lockdown. On Thursday, the DA also said it was taking the government to court in 2 separate matters that challenged the validity of some aspects of the national lockdown, including the military-enforced night curfew, the ban on e-commerce, and the restriction on exercise hours. DA interim leader John Steenhuisen said, "It is our opinion, and it is the view of many South Africans, that all 3 of these decisions should be immediately reversed, as there are no rational justifications for a military-enforced curfew, a restriction on e-commerce, and a limited 3-hour window for exercise." Well, of course it's irrational. It's a friggin' ANC. What do you expect? L factor, missing in action. The DA will also file court papers challenging the constitutionality of having no parliamentary oversight inscribed in the Disaster Management Act. Groenewald said the lockdown cannot be extended in an attempt to prevent the spread of the virus from reaching its peak in certain areas. It's bound to happen, and with the winter months at our door, unlocking the country cannot be postponed any further, Groenewald said. The Freedom Front Plus recognizes that the virus poses a real threat to many human lives, but if a country's economy comes to a complete standstill, it will, without a doubt, also result in a great loss of lives, severe poverty and suffering, which is clearly what's going to happen at the end of this lockdown. The economy is smashed. According to Groenewald, it has always been of the utmost importance to strike a balance between limiting the spread of the virus and unlocking the country's economy. Waiting another 2 weeks before moving to level 3 will seriously disturb that delicate balance, the Freedom Front Plus leader said. He said the chances that continued restrictions will do a lot more damage to the economy and ordinary citizens' livelihood are much greater than the chances of it limiting the rate of infection any further. He went on to say that the government is abusing its powers by invoking the National Disaster Management Act instead of the State of Emergency Act, seeing as a state of emergency may only be implemented for 3 weeks and all regulations require Parliament's approval and oversight, which entails the involvement of all represented parties. Even the Secretary-General of the United Nations, Groenewald asserted, Antonio Guterres, has indicated that South Africa is one of the countries that is abusing the lockdown to violate the rights of its citizens. In April, the UN Human Rights Office raised concerns about the use of excessive force in several countries, including South Africa, as governments enforce lockdowns in a bid to stop the spread of COVID-19. The Freedom Front Plus will request the court to rule that all business enterprises will be allowed to become fully operational and trade on condition that they have relevant health and safety measures in place to curb the spread of the virus. Groenewald went on to say, the party's application will also request the court to ask the government to provide its reasons for imposing such stringent regulations and the reasons for why these regulations are still in place, even though they have already achieved their primary objective. He added that the government should also disclose the data on which the state of disaster is based and explain the reasoning behind how the timelines for the various levels of lockdown are determined. The reasons for the delay in the official announcement of regulations, which are in many cases unclear and without any schedule, must also be provided. Groenewald concluded by saying, therefore, the Freedom Front Plus will urgently approach the court to address these matters. The government's abuse of power must not be tolerated. Well, I have no argument with that. And clearly, Ramaphosa's primary aim is to destroy small white businesses in South Africa. That's what's called black economic transformation. All right, guys, please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Ring the bell for the updates. Please like this video. Please share this video. And above all, please stay safe.